No caretaker lasted with the Arab executive's new lover until an African maid did the impossible. The sprawling glass towers of Dubai glittered under the desert sun, symbols of wealth, ambition, and power. At the very top, Zahir al-Mansour, one of the Middle East's most influential Arab executives, lived a life many could only dream of. Yet, behind the golden gates of his mansion, trouble brewed. His new lover, Layla, beautiful but feared, had driven out every caretaker hired to maintain their home. No one lasted more than a week. Whispers spread that Layla was impossible to please, her temper sharper than the desert wind. But one day, fate intervened. A young African maid named Amara walked into their lives, carrying nothing but her courage and a hope of earning enough to support her sick mother back home. What happened next would shock everyone, because Amara was about to do the impossible. She would not only endure Layla's cruelty, but also uncover secrets that could shake Zahir's empire to its very core. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring you more inspiring and powerful. The sun was setting over Dubai, casting streaks of gold and crimson across the skyline as the city prepared for another restless night. At the edge of the city, far from the noise of the bustling souks and glittering skyscrapers, stood Zahir al-Mansour's estate, a palace disguised as a home. Its white marble walls stretched like a fortress, and within it, silence ruled. It was a silence of intimidation, the kind that made servants lower their eyes and walk with hurried steps, careful not to draw attention. Inside, Layla stood before a grand mirror in the master bedroom. Draped in emerald silk, her beauty was undeniable. Her almond eyes sparkled under the chandelier light. Her lips painted a deep crimson, but her expression betrayed impatience. With every passing day, her influence over Zahir grew. She knew her worth, but she also knew how fragile her position could be. Zahir's world was one of constant scrutiny: investors, family rivals, and the press. To secure her place, Layla tightened her grip on the household. Servants whispered about her temper. One maid had been dismissed after dropping a crystal glass, another for serving tea too cold. Every week, a new caretaker came, and every week they left, humiliated, broken, or simply too afraid to stay. Zahir remained silent, perhaps too consumed by his empire to intervene, or perhaps unwilling to see Layla's darker side. It was on a humid Tuesday morning when Amara first arrived. She stood at the heavy iron gates, clutching her small bag close to her chest. She was not dressed like the other maids who had come before her, polished and rehearsed. Her clothes were simple, her sandals worn thin, her eyes carrying both fear and fire. She was young, yet her posture carried the weight of responsibilities far greater than her age. The head butler, Khalid, studied her skeptically. "You're sure you want this job?" he asked, lowering his voice. "No one lasts here." Amara nodded. "I don't have a choice." Her voice trembled, but her eyes did not. Her mother's hospital bills in Nairobi were mounting, and every day spent searching for a safer job was another day her mother's life hung in the balance. This was her chance, however dangerous, and she refused to let fear dictate her fate. When Layla first laid eyes on her, she smirked. "Another one? Let's see how long she lasts." Her words cut through the air, sharp enough to slice Amara's confidence. But the young woman stood tall, bowing slightly. Her first task was deceptively simple: polish the silver dining set before an important dinner that night. But the pressure was immense. The table stretched endlessly, adorned with gold inlays and delicate porcelain. As Amara worked, Layla watched from a distance, her arms crossed, waiting for a mistake. The other maids whispered from the kitchen, "She won't last." None of us did. Yet Amara's hands did not falter. She polished each piece with care, humming softly under her breath. It wasn't just about surviving Layla's wrath. It was about proving something to herself. She remembered her mother's words. Strength is not in shouting, Amara, but in standing when others expect you to fall. Hours later, the dining set gleamed. When Layla inspected it, she searched for imperfections. She found none. For the first time, her lips curved into a reluctant smile, though her eyes burned with something Amara couldn't yet decipher, challenge or curiosity. That evening, Zahir entered the dining hall. His presence was commanding, his tailored navy suit immaculate, his stride purposeful. At 52, he carried himself with the elegance of a man who had conquered empires. Yet the fatigue etched into his features told another story. He glanced at the table, then at Amara, who stood quietly in the corner. "Perfect," he said simply, before turning his attention to Layla. Those words, simple to him, ignited something in Amara. It was the first recognition she had received in months. But it also sparked Layla's jealousy. How could a mere maid receive praise when so many had failed before? The dinner passed in a blur of laughter from guests and clinking glasses, but beneath the glitter, tension brewed. Amara noticed Layla's piercing gaze fixed on her. Every step she took, every movement she made, was under scrutiny, and yet she carried herself with calm determination. Later that night, after the guests had left and the mansion quieted, Amara walked through the long, dimly lit corridors back to her quarters. She paused by a window overlooking the garden, the night breeze carrying the scent of jasmine. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, but peace was short-lived. Layla appeared the next morning. The mansion stirred before dawn. Servants shuffled quietly through the halls, preparing for the day. Yet there was a different energy in the air, a mixture of unease and curiosity. Everyone had seen how Amara survived her first night under Layla's watchful eyes. That alone was extraordinary. In the kitchen, whispers floated between staff. "She's still here?" One maid muttered, slicing fruit with trembling hands. She spoke back to Layla. Another whispered in disbelief. "She won't last long," Khalid, the butler, said with a sigh. But even he watched Amara differently, as though wondering whether this girl might truly endure what no one else had. Amara entered the kitchen silently, tying her apron. Her face was calm, but her mind was anything but. She had barely slept, replaying Layla's words in her head. "I've broken stronger women than you." It was a threat meant to crush her spirit, but instead, it fueled her determination. Every insult, every glare, every test, she would meet them all. Her first task that day came earlier than expected. Layla summoned her to the garden, where she lounged under a canopy, sipping rose tea. The air was heavy with heat, the desert sun already punishing. Layla didn't even glance at Amara when she gave the order. "The marble fountain is dirty. I want it spotless by noon." Amara turned toward the massive centerpiece of the garden, a towering fountain carved with lions, their mouths spouting water into a pool lined with mosaic tiles. Dust and algae clung to the stone, and birds nested in its cracks. Cleaning it by hand would take hours, if not days. But Amara only nodded. "Yes, madam." Layla's lips twitched, satisfied. She leaned back in her chair, convinced that this new maid would soon crumble under the weight of the impossible. Amara fetched buckets, brushes, and soap. The task was grueling. The sun burned her skin. Sweat drenched her clothes, and her arms ached with every scrub. Still, she worked methodically, humming softly to steady her mind. Every stroke of the brush was more than labor. It was defiance. She refused to fail. From an upstairs balcony, Zahir observed quietly. He had risen early for calls with London investors, but found himself distracted by the sight of the young maid bent over the fountain, scrubbing with relentless focus. Something about her persistence caught his attention. He had seen countless people crumble under Layla's presence, but this girl, she stood out. By midday, the fountain sparkled. The lions gleamed, water flowed clear, and the air shimmered with the scent of soap and jasmine. Amara stood back, exhausted but proud. When Layla inspected the fountain, she could not hide her irritation. She expected failure, an excuse to dismiss Amara, yet the fountain shone as though newly built. "Lucky," she muttered, before turning away. But her narrowed eyes betrayed something else. Unease. That evening, Zahir approached Amara for the first time. He found her in the servants' quarters, folding linens. His presence filled the small room, his voice calm yet commanding. "You cleaned the fountain?" Amara nodded, lowering her eyes. "Yes, sir." Zahir studied her, noting the calluses on her hands, the exhaustion in her frame, but also the quiet dignity she carried. Most would have quit. "Why didn't you?" Amara hesitated. Because I can't afford to quit. It was an honest answer, one that caught Zahir off guard. In his world, people clung to power, to wealth, to status. But here was someone clinging simply to survival, to duty. It stirred something in him, a memory of his own struggles before he rose to power. He gave a short nod. Do your work well. That is enough. It was not praise, not exactly. But in the mansion of fear, it was the closest thing to approval Amara had ever known. Yet not everyone saw her resilience as admirable. Late that night, as the servants cleaned the dining hall, Amara overheard two men speaking in hushed tones near the wine cellar. Their voices were sharp, urgent. She's becoming too comfortable. Layla won't tolerate it. Then maybe we'll make sure she doesn't stay. Amara froze, heart pounding. They were talking about her. The words were vague, but the intent was clear. She was a threat to someone, and threats didn't last long in this house. When she returned to her quarters, she lay awake, listening to the distant hum of the city outside the mansion's walls. For the first time, she realized this was not just about surviving Layla's cruelty. There were deeper games at play here, webs of jealousy and power that stretched beyond her understanding. The next day confirmed her fears. Layla gave her another impossible order, to prepare a lavish dinner for Zahir's foreign guests, alone. Normally, a team of chefs and servers handled such affairs, but Layla dismissed them all with a wave of her hand. She thinks you're special, Layla sneered. Let's see if you really are. The kitchen was a battlefield of flavors, spices, and fire. Amara had cooked before, but never for dignitaries, never under this kind of pressure. Still, she moved with calm efficiency, her memory guiding her hands through recipes learned at her mother's side. Amara woke before dawn, her body aching from the night in the kitchen, her mind still heavy from the weight of whispered threats. Yet, as she walked through the corridors of marble and gold, she carried herself with quiet resilience. Every step echoed her resolve. She would not be broken, but the mansion itself seemed to resist her presence. Where others saw opulence, Amara saw traps. Every shimmering chandelier, every polished surface, every watchful eye carried judgment. She had survived two impossible tasks, but she knew that survival alone painted a target on her back. That morning, Zahir prepared to leave for his downtown office. He walked to Grand Foyer, his phone pressed to his ear, issuing instructions in clipped Arabic and English. His empire never rested. Oil, construction, technology. The reach of his wealth spread like veins through the city. Yet beneath his polished exterior, Amara noticed the lines of exhaustion deepening on his face. When he ended his call, his eyes briefly met hers as she adjusted a vase of fresh roses. For a second, she thought she saw something. Curiosity, maybe even respect. But before she could be certain, Layla swept into the room like a storm. "Zahir," she said sweetly, looping her arm through his. "Don't be late for dinner tonight. We have important guests." Her eyes flickered to Amara, sharp and deliberate. "And make sure everything is flawless, or there will be consequences." The threat wasn't subtle, and Amara felt the sting of it settle into her chest. Layla wasn't content with humiliating her. She wanted her gone. Hours later, as Amara polished the floors, one of the senior maids hurried to her side. "You must be careful," the woman whispered. "Layla doesn't just dismiss people. Some left in tears. Others never returned to the city at all." Amara's heart raced. "What do you mean?" But before the woman could answer, Khalid, the butler, entered, silencing the conversation with a stern look. "Get back to work," he ordered. The warning lingered in Amara's mind all day. There were secrets in this house, shadows hidden behind the gleam of wealth, and now she was part of them. By late afternoon, preparation for the evening's dinner began. The guest list included 2 influential investors from Europe and a cousin of Zahir's who had recently returned from abroad. Layla oversaw every detail, her voice sharp as she barked orders. Yet no matter how much she tried to trip Amara, the young maid moved with calm precision. She arranged flowers, set cutlery, and ensured the chandeliers sparkled. When the guests arrived, the mansion lit up with laughter and music. Amara moved quietly among them, serving wine and clearing plates. From her place in the shadows, she observed everything. The way Layla clung to Zahir's arm, whispering into his ear, the way his cousin studied Layla with a knowing look, and the way Layla's gaze occasionally darted toward Amara with unmasked hostility. During dessert, a tense moment broke the polished surface of the evening. Zahir's cousin leaned back in his chair, swirling his glass of wine. "Zahir, my dear cousin, your choice of companions has raised some conversations in the family." The room stilled. Layla's smile faltered. "Conversations?" Zahir asked, his voice measured. The cousin smirked. "She is beautiful, yes, but beauty can be costly. Are you certain she is not a liability?" Layla's eyes flashed with fury, but Zahir raised a hand to silence her. "My decisions are my own," he said firmly. The tension broke into uneasy laughter, but the air remained thick. Amara caught Layla's glance, one filled not with gratitude for Zahir's defense, but with venom. Someone would pay for this humiliation, and Amara feared she already knew who. After the guests departed and the mansion quieted, Amara stayed behind in the dining hall, gathering the last of the crystal glasses. The room was dim, lit only by the moon spilling through the tall windows. She carried the tray toward the kitchen when she heard footsteps behind her. "You embarrass me tonight." Layla's voice was low, venomous. Amara turned, clutching the tray to steady herself. "I did nothing, madam." "You exist," Layla snapped. She stepped closer, her perfume thick in the air, her eyes blazing. "Do you think Zahir notices you? Do you think his words of approval mean anything? You are nothing but dust beneath my heels. And I will prove it." Amara's throat tightened, but she forced herself to stand tall. "I only came here to work. Nothing more." Layla leaned closer, her lips curling. "Then work will destroy you." She swept past, her gown trailing behind her like a serpent, leaving Amara trembling in the silence. Later that night, Amara slipped into the servants' quarters, her mind restless. She lay on her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, when she heard a soft knock. It was Khalid, the butler. His usually stern face was softened with something that almost looked like pity. "You must be careful," he said quietly. "Layla is not your only danger here." Amara sat up, heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Khalid hesitated, glancing over his shoulder before whispering. "There are things in this house you don't understand." The next days in the mansion passed like a storm held at bay, heavy with tension, waiting for thunder. Amara felt it in every corridor, in every glance from the other servants. Layla's rage still lingered from the dinner humiliation, and her words, "Work will destroy you," echoed in Amara's mind. But it wasn't just Layla anymore. Khalid's warning replayed in her thoughts each night. "Layla is not your only danger here." That single sentence had shifted everything. She was no longer battling only cruelty. She was trapped in a larger web, one woven around Zahir himself. On the third morning, a commotion erupted. Zahir's cousin, the same man who had dared insult Layla at dinner, arrived unannounced. His black luxury car pulled up the circular driveway, and he entered the mansion with the confidence of a man who believed the house still belonged, in some way, to him. Amara was polishing the entrance when she heard his voice, smooth but edged with malice. "Zahir, my dear cousin, we need to talk." The two men disappeared into Zahir's study. Minutes stretched into an hour, tension leaking from behind the closed door. When the cousin emerged, his face was tight with anger. He brushed past Amara, muttering, "This empire won't last forever." Amara shivered. She didn't need the details to know she had witnessed another crack in the fortress. Later that afternoon, Layla summoned Amara to the terrace. The sun blazed overhead, reflecting off the pool's turquoise surface. Layla lounged on a white recliner, sunglasses masking her eyes, a glass of champagne in her hand. "You'll prepare me for tonight," Layla said without looking at her. "Dress, jewelry, everything. If I shine, Zahir shines. If I don't," she lowered her sunglasses, pinning Amara with her gaze, "you'll regret it." Amara bowed her head. "Yes, madam." It was a dangerous task. Choosing wrong could ignite Layla's wrath. But Amara moved with care, bringing gown after gown from a massive wardrobe, selecting jewelry that highlighted Layla's beauty without overshadowing her presence. She worked quietly, her hands steady even as her heart raced. When Layla finally looked at herself in the mirror, Her lips curved. Acceptable. For Amara, it was a victory, but it was fleeting. That night, as guests filled the mansion once more, Amara slipped between them with trays of wine. She noticed Layla laughing too loudly, clinging to Zahir's arm, her smile rehearsed. Zahir, however, seemed distant. His gaze often drifted to windows, to the city lights beyond the estate, as if his empire weighed heavier than the company of those around him. Then, in a moment that made Amara's blood freeze, she saw it. A folded envelope passed discreetly from Zahir's cousin to one of the European guests. A slip of paper, gone in an instant, but Amara's sharp eyes caught it, and the look on their faces told her it was no ordinary message. Secrets, deals, betrayal. After the guest departed, Amara stayed behind to gather the crystal glasses. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. That's when Khalid appeared again, his face pale. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked. Amara blinked, startled. "Saw what?" "The letter. The exchange." Her silence was answer enough. Khalid lowered his voice. "You must understand, Amara, this house is more dangerous than you know. Zahir's empire is not built on sand. It's built on enemies, and some of those enemies are inside these walls." Amara's breath caught. "Why tell me this?" "Because you've already been drawn in," Khalid said gravely. "Layla sees you as a threat. Zahir's cousin sees you as a witness. And Zahir, he notices you more than you realize." Amara shook her head. "I'm just a maid." Khalid's eyes hardened. "No, you're becoming something else. And that will put you in greater danger than all who came before you." That night, Amara lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding. She had come here to work, to survive, to send money home. But now, she was tangled in something far bigger. Power struggles she barely understood, loyalty she couldn't predict, and danger she couldn't escape. The breaking point came the next morning. Layla stormed into the servants' quarters, fury blazing in her eyes. In her hand, she held a necklace, shattered, pearls scattering across the floor like drops of milk. "Who touched this?" she demanded. No one spoke. The servants froze, terrified. Layla's gaze landed on Amara. "I never touched it," Amara said quickly, her voice steady but her stomach twisting. "Liar!" Layla screamed, stepping closer. "Do you think Zahir will protect you? Do you think you can stand in my house and defy me?" She raised her hand, as if to strike. Amara didn't flinch. She met Layla's gaze, her voice firm. "I came here to work, but I will not be broken." The silence that followed was suffocating. Layla's hand trembled in the air. Fury etched into every line of her face. But she didn't strike. Not because she didn't want to, but because at that very moment, Zahir's voice cut through the room. "Enough." Everyone turned. Zahir stood in the doorway, his presence filling the space. His eyes were fixed on Layla, cold and commanding. "This ends now," he said. Layla lowered her hand slowly, her face tightening into a mask of wounded pride. She turned. The mansion was quieter than usual the morning after Zahir intervened. But it was not a peaceful silence. It was a suffocating calm before a storm. Every servant walked on edge, glancing nervously at doors, whispering in corners. Amara felt it too. She had crossed a line she never intended, not by action, but by circumstance. Zahir had defended her, and that alone had changed the balance of power in the house. Layla avoided her at breakfast, but her absence of fury was more frightening than her usual sharp words. It was the silence of planning, the cold patience of someone who would strike when least expected. Amara focused on her duties, scrubbing the floors of the East Wing until her knees ached. She wanted to believe she could simply keep her head down and survive, but survival no longer felt simple. Her presence had become symbolic, a quiet rebellion against Layla, a quiet presence that Zahir noticed when others tried to erase her. That afternoon, Amara was summoned to Zahir's study. Her heart pounded as she entered the grand room lined with dark oak shelves and maps of his empire. He stood by the window, the skyline of Dubai behind him, his hands clasped behind his back. "Amara," he said without turning. "Yes, sir." "You have endured much in this house." His tone was neither cold nor warm, but heavy, as though weighed by more than words. "Tell me, why you stay?" Amara hesitated. "Because I must. My mother is sick. The money I earn here pays for her medicine." At last he turned to face her. His eyes, dark and piercing, studied her as though searching for weakness. "And if it were not for her, would you endure all of this yourself?" Her lips parted, but no words came. She had never asked herself that question. Zahir's voice softened. "You remind me of myself when I was young. People think I was born into power, but they do not see the years when I had nothing. I, too, endured humiliation, betrayal, until I rose above it." Amar's breath caught. She had never imagined he would reveal such vulnerability, not to her, a maid. He stepped closer. "Do not let anyone here break you, not even Layla." Before she could respond, a sharp knock broke the moment. Khalid entered, his face pale. "Sir, forgive me, but there is a matter you must see." Zahir frowned, nodding. "We'll continue later." Amara left quickly, her heart still racing, her mind spiraling. Why had he said those words to her? Why had he seen her struggle when others ignored it? That night, as the mansion quieted, Amara returned to the servants' quarters, but her door was ajar. Someone had been inside. She stepped cautiously, her breath shallow. On her bed lay an envelope, plain, unmarked. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, scrawled in rough handwriting. "Leave now, before it is too late." Amara's stomach twisted. Who had left this? Was it a warning or a threat? Before she could think further, a shadow filled the doorway. "Layla, you read it," she said, her voice silky and cold. Amara stiffened, clutching the note. "What is this?" Layla stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "It is a chance, one you won't get again." Amara's throat tightened. "You want me gone?" "I want you safe," Layla hissed, and for a moment her mask slipped. Behind the fury, there was fear, genuine fear. "You think I am your enemy, but there are worse dangers in this house than me. Dangers you cannot see. Do you think Zahir's cousin comes here to drink tea and laugh at dinners? Do you think Zahir tells you everything?" Amar's voice was barely a whisper. "Why are you telling me this?" Layla's jaw clenched. "Because you are a fool if you stay, and fools die in this house." Then just as quickly, her mask returned. She turned on her heel, leaving Amara trembling in the dark. The next morning, chaos erupted. Zahir's cousin returned, this time with 2 suited men at his side. Their presence was sharp, dangerous, their eyes scanning the mansion like predators. Servants froze in fear. From the kitchen, Amara overheard snippets of their conversation. Words like assets, transfer, betrayal. She realized then, the letter she had seen pass at dinner was not just family intrigue. It was business, perhaps treasonous business, and Zahir's cousin was at the center of it. That evening, when Zahir returned, his fury was palpable. His voice roared through the halls. Doors slammed. Phones rang endlessly. Amara carried trays past the study and caught a glimpse inside. Zahir slamming a folder onto the desk, his cousin standing defiantly across from him. "You dare!" Zahir growled. "You've grown weak," the cousin spat. "Blinded by your lover, distracted by your empire. You cannot protect what you built." Amara slipped away before she could hear more, her heart hammering. The walls of the mansion were closing in, and she was caught in the middle of a war she never asked to fight. That night, as she lay in bed, she could not sleep. She remembered Layla's words. "There are worse dangers here than me." She remembered Khalid's warning. "Some would rather see you gone than watch you become useful." And she remembered Zahir's eyes, filled with something she couldn't name, when he told her not to let anyone break her. Amara realized she stood at a crossroads. She could flee, escape this gilded prison before it consumed her. Or she could stay, and risk being pulled into the heart of a storm that could destroy them all. As the clock struck midnight, footsteps echoed in the hall. A shadow paused outside her door. For a long moment, it remained there, silent, waiting. Then it moved on. Amara lay frozen, her breath shallow. The game was no longer about survival. It was about who would fall first. The mansion was no longer a sanctuary of marble and glass. It had become a battlefield. Whispers of betrayal spread through the corridors like smoke, and Amara could feel the weight of every glance, every silence. She knew the walls themselves carried secrets, and those secrets were ready to explode. That night, she was summoned again, not by Layla, not by Kala, but by Zahir himself. His study was dim, lit only by the glow of the city skyline through the vast window. He stood tall, his suit impeccable, but his face was carved with fatigue. "Amara," he began, his voice steady, "I trust you." The words stunned her. "Me? You've seen what others have not. You've endured where others have fallen. And I know you've heard things. My cousin thinks I am blind, but I am not. He conspires to dismantle everything I have built." His eyes narrowed. "I need to know if Layla is part of it." Amara's chest tightened. Layla. Cruel, impossible, terrifying. But was she also a traitor? She remembered the broken pearls, the venom in Layla's voice, and yet also the fear that cracked her mask when she said, "There are worse dangers here than me." "I don't think she is," Amara said softly. Zahir studied her in silence, then gave a single nod. Then she must choose her side. As must you. Before Amara could respond, shouting erupted in the courtyard. Zahir's cousin had returned, this time not with words but with force. Armed men at his back. The mansion doors shook as guards clashed in the night. Servants screamed, scattering. Amara froze, her body trembling. But Zahir's voice cut through the chaos. "Stay behind me." He strode into the foyer, his presence commanding even as danger pressed through the gates. His cousin's voice rang out, furious. "Your empire dies tonight." The standoff was brutal. Bodyguards rushing to hold the line, the sound of glass shattering, furniture overturned. Amara pressed herself against the wall, her eyes darting, her heart racing. And then she saw her, Layla, descending the stairs in her silk gown, her face pale. She moved to Zahir's side, surprising everyone. "If he falls, we all fall," she said, her voice steady. For once, there was no cruelty in her words. Only survival, only resolve. Amara realizing that Layla was no ally, no enemy. She was what the mansion itself was. Dangerous, fragile, built on power and fear. The fight ended as quickly as it began. Zahir's men forced the cousins' retreat, but the message was clear. The war was far from over. When silence returned, Zahir turned to Amara. His gaze softened. "You could leave. No one would blame you." Amara shook her head. Her voice was quiet but firm. "I came here for survival, but now I stay for strength." For the first time, Zahir allowed himself a small smile. "Then you have done the impossible." And in that moment, Amara understood. She was no longer just a maid in the mansion of the Arab executive. She had become part of its story, a story of resilience, courage, and survival in the face of power and betrayal. The storm had not ended, but she had endured it, and that in itself was victory.